be honest for a second. Um, what is the one bad habit you know you absolutely should stop, but you just, like, keep doing it anyway?
Oh, everyone has at least one.
Right. So picture it right now in your head. Maybe it's, you know, hitting snooze 4 times every single morning, just convincing yourself you're getting deep sleep.
Or maybe it's grabbing your smartphone the exact second you open your eyes, just flooding your brain with emails before you've even had, like, a glass of water.
Yeah, we all have that one thing. And usually, when we talk about our bad habits, there's this incredibly heavy cloud of guilt hanging over us. We look in the mirror and think it's just this fundamental character flaw.
Totally. We view it as this massive personal failure of discipline. Like, we tell ourselves we just aren't strong enough. But when you actually look at the research, the reality is far more mechanical.
Which is such a relief, honestly.
It really is. It's actually a lot more forgiving once you understand the neurological and psychological machinery that's kind of running behind the scenes.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into a stack of linguistic and behavioral research that completely reframes how we understand and talk about our bad habits.
And we aren't just doing this to feel better about ourselves, though. I mean, that is a nice bonus.
The very nice bonus. But our mission today is to examine the absolute best everyday English phrases for describing our quirks, while also uncovering the hidden psychological mechanics of, why we sabotage ourselves.
And more importantly, how we can finally break the cycle.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin with admitting our flaws without sending our self-esteem into a complete tailspin?
Well, it begins with the vocabulary of confession. Because before you can dismantle a habitual behavior, you have to be able to articulate it accurately.
Right?
What is incredibly clever about the conversational strategies we're analyzing today is how they utilize specific English phrasal verbs to gently confess these behaviors. The language itself is engineered to just remove the harsh self-judgment.
Okay, let's look at the phrase, put something off. The case studies we reviewed outline this painfully relatable sequence regarding procrastination.
Oh, the procrastination cascade.
It perfectly captures how a task gets delayed not all at once, but in these tiny microtransactions. Like you look at a complex project and think, I'll tackle this after lunch.
Right, but then after lunch, your brain negotiates, well, I need coffee first to really focus.
Exactly. And then after coffee becomes tomorrow, and tomorrow suddenly becomes next week.
It illustrates the cascade of avoidance beautifully. By choosing the phrase, I put things off, you are describing an ongoing process. You are, like, separating the action from your identity.
Which is huge.
It is. You aren't labeling yourself as an intrinsically lazy person. You are simply acknowledging a mechanical action of delaying a task.
It's like a freight train of deferred maintenance. It starts as a tiny, harmless delay at the station, just waiting until after coffee. But it slowly gathers momentum until it turns into this massive, unstoppable force of procrastination.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But let me challenge that slightly. What if we are engaging in the habit completely unconsciously? Like the train has left the station and we don't even remember buying a ticket.
Okay, that brings us to another critical piece of phrasing I tend to. This modal phrase implies a leaning, like a natural gravitational pull toward a behavior that you usually or often do without necessarily making an active decision to initiate it.
Right.
One of the case studies highlights a participant saying, I tend to check my phone too often.
Oh, man, that specific example hit incredibly close to home for me. In the documentation, a person opens their phone just to check the time, and suddenly they are 30 minutes deep into a video about a man building a tiny house in the mountains.
Which is so absurdly specific.
Yet entirely universal. You don't consciously decide to sit down and watch off-grid construction. You just tend to fall into the scroll. The algorithm catches you in a weak moment.
What's fascinating here is the psychology behind why we tend to fall into these specific unconscious behaviors, particularly at the end of the day when our cognitive defenses are just completely down. Oh, this is the part I was waiting for.
The research brings up a concept that serves as a major light bulb moment. It's called revenge bedtime procrastination.
Let's spend some time on this because it literally blew my mind.
Yeah.
This is the act of staying up until midnight or 1 a.m. for quote-unquote me time.
Yeah. It occurs when you stay awake late, fully aware that you are exhausted and need sleep, simply because you feel like you didn't have enough free time or control over your schedule during your waking hours.
Wow.
It is fundamentally an act of rebellion against your own busy life. You are taking revenge on your lack of daytime autonomy by sacrificing your physical rest.
So it's not that you're just, bad at going to bed or that you have poor time management.
Yeah.
You're desperately trying to claw back your autonomy from a day filled with obligations.
Exactly.
But because you're attempting this rebellion at 1 a.m., your brain is completely fried. The only thing you actually have the energy for is watching tiny house videos or scrolling social media.
Precisely. And once you understand the psychological mechanism that you are starving for autonomy, you can shift the conversation. We stop obsessing over what we are doing wrong and start addressing why we are stuck doing it.
So using the phrasing, "I tend to stay up late," softens the guilt and opens the door for that self-reflection.
Exactly.
But, I mean, realizing I'm exhausted and scrolling doesn't actually stop me from doing it the next night. We know staying up late is bad. We know eating a sleeve of cookies when we're stressed is bad. If we logically understand the damage, how does the biological trap just keep resetting itself?
Well, it comes down to the sheer evolutionary power of routine. Bad habits survive and thrive because they're comfortable, and our brains are incredibly efficient resource-hoarding machines.
They just want the easiest path.
Always. The brain absolutely loves familiar routines because they require zero active decision-making.
They bypass the prefrontal cortex entirely.
They do. You don't have to think, you just execute the loop. This is why the linguistic phrase, creature of habit, is so vital.
Being a creature of habit isn't inherently bad. It's actually a biological necessity. If you had to consciously think about every single step of making coffee or driving your car, you would be totally exhausted by 9 a.m.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The research breaks down the profound mismatch between immediate rewards and delayed consequences. That seems to be the central glitch in our hardware.
That glitch is the entire trap. The habits we struggle with the most, mindlessly scrolling our phones, snacking out of boredom, impulsive online shopping, they all hijack our dopamine pathways.
They feel good right away.
Exactly. They deliver an immediate, unearned spike of pleasure. You feel relief or excitement right now. The negative consequence, like being severely sleep-deprived the next day, feeling physically lethargic, or looking at a depleted bank account that doesn't arrive until hours or days later.
The brain takes the quick cash and totally ignores the future debt.
Yes, exactly that.
But I want to push back on this framework a little, or at least complicate it a bit.
Okay, go for it.
The source material brings up the habit of saying yes too quickly. The example given is someone immediately agreeing to help a colleague or a friend because they don't want to disappoint them, and then 3 hours later asking themselves, why on earth did I agree to this?
That's a classic one.
Right. But is that genuinely a habit driven by dopamine loops, or is that just a deep-seated personality trait? Like, isn't that just being a people pleaser?
Well, this raises an important question about where personality ends and behavioral conditioning begins. While people-pleasing might be a personality tendency, the physical act of saying yes before you even glance at your calendar is a deeply ingrained conditioned reflex.
Oh, interesting. So it operates on the exact same machinery as checking your phone.
It does. Think about the mechanics. When someone asks you for a favor, there is a momentary spike of social tension. By blurting out yes, you instantly relieve that tension.
And that relief is the reward.
That is your immediate reward. You avoid the momentary discomfort of setting a boundary or disappointing someone. The delayed consequence, being completely overwhelmed, resentful, and overcommitted on a Saturday, arrives much later. Making commitments before checking your reality is absolutely a dangerous behavioral loop.
Wow. Okay. The quick cash is social harmony, and the future debt is burning out your weekend.
Exactly.
Okay, since we are exploring how to articulate these routines to others, we need to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Knowing the vocabulary is one thing, but understanding the sociolinguistic impact of these phrases requires some context.
Context is everything. The way you frame a flaw to a friend completely determines whether the conversation becomes a conflict or a connection.
Let's do a quick role play, pulling from the daily routine transcripts in our research.
Oh, I'm ready for this.
I want you to play this slightly observant, maybe a little judgmental office coworker who is calling me out on my predictable behavior. I'm going to play the defensive routine lover, and I'll use the specific English phrasing we've covered to try and soften the confrontation. Ready?
I am ready. Let's set the scene. We are standing in the office break room. I'm watching you execute your morning beverage ritual for the 100th time.
Okay, action.
It's genuinely fascinating watching you every morning. You order the exact same dark roast coffee, you walk in and sit in that exact same chair by the window, and I swear you organize your desk pens the exact same way before you even open your laptop. It's like clockwork.
Look, I just tend to like what I like. Okay, there's nothing wrong with knowing your preferences.
Yeah.
But I will admit, I am trying to cut down on the coffee part. The chair by the window, though, that is strictly non-negotiable.
And seen. Now, analyzing that exchange, think about the social tension that was just diffused. Did you notice how natural those syntactical softeners felt?
It completely de-escalated the moment. If I had just said, I like my routine, it sounds rigid, almost hostile.
Precisely. By utilizing tend to, you immediately provided a buffer. You framed your behavior as a natural, harmless inclination rather than a strict, inflexible demand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And by adding that you are trying to cut down on the coffee, you signaled self-awareness. You offered a peace offering to the judgmental friend, showing you are working on a flaw, but without making a dramatic, definitive declaration.
Which perfectly transitions us into the reality of how we actually stop these behaviors.
Yes.
Now that we can clearly define our habits and navigate the social guilt surrounding them, how do we short-circuit the biology? The material issues a massive warning against what they call the extreme goal.
Setting extreme, absolute goals is arguably the most common reason people fail to change their behavior.
Just setting themselves up for failure.
The documentation highlights that declaring something like, I'm never going to eat processed sugar again, is a guaranteed recipe for a rebound effect.
The research literally points out that 3 days after making that grand, sweeping promise, you usually end up eating cake directly from the box in the middle of the night.
Because absolute goals force you to rely entirely on cognitive willpower.
Yeah.
And we have to stop viewing willpower as this infinite resource.
It really isn't. It is much more like a daily cognitive budget, right?
Exactly. You wake up with a certain amount of currency, but every time you make a decision, every time you actively resist a temptation, you are spending that currency. By 8 p.m., your cognitive bank account is totally overdrawn.
That is a fantastic way to conceptualize it.
When your budget is depleted, the basal ganglia, the habit center of the brain, takes over completely. This is why the vocabulary of reduction is vastly more practical and psychologically safer than the vocabulary of eradication.
Right.
There is a distinct linguistic and behavioral difference between giving something up and cutting back on something.
Let's pull those apart for a second.
Giving something up implies a complete and total cessation, quitting cold turkey. It requires massive, continuous withdrawals from your cognitive budget. But cutting back on or cutting down on simply implies modifying the volume.
Like the individual in the case study who went from drinking 5 cups of coffee a day down to 2. That is infinitely more manageable. You aren't denying your brain the ritual entirely. You are just renegotiating the terms.
Exactly.
But even if we are just cutting back, how do we protect that daily cognitive budget? How do we stop spending all our energy just resisting?
The research provides a brutally simple answer. Change your physical environment.
Yes.
Do not rely on internal discipline when you can rely on external architecture.
This might be the most actionable takeaway of the entire deep dive. The specific interventions are so simple they almost sound too easy. If your problem is checking your phone the absolute second you wake up, don't lie in bed repeating a motivational mantra. Just move the phone charger across the room.
Yes. By physically relocating the charger, you introduce friction into the automatic behavioral loop.
You make it hard.
Exactly. When the alarm goes off, your brain wants the immediate dopamine hit. But now you force your physical body to get out of bed, walk across the cold floor, and retrieve the device.
You're literally waking up the prefrontal cortex. You make the bad habit incredibly annoying to execute.
And the same principle applies to studying or doing deep work. One case study followed someone who constantly brought snacks to their desk while trying to study.
And predictably, they just ate the snacks and spent 3 hours completely distracted.
Right. The solution wasn't to build better character, it was just leaving the chips in the pantry.
It leans on the classic psychological reality summarized by the idiom, out of sight, out of mind.
Yes. When a visual trigger is removed from your environment, the neural craving is significantly reduced. If your running shoes are sitting directly in front of the door where you physically have to step over them, you increase the likelihood of running. But if a plate of cookies is sitting right next to your keyboard,
Oh, you are going to eat them. It is a biological guarantee. You're basically fighting millions of years of human evolution at that point, and evolution is going to win every single time.
you have to engineer your space so that the good habits are the path of least resistance, and the bad habits are invisible and highly difficult to access.
But let's look at the messy reality for a second. Even if you optimize your environment, even if you hide the cookies and put the phone in another room, sometimes we still falter.
Of course.
The environment is perfectly designed, and we still fail to execute. The source material highlights a specific phrase for navigating this exact moment of failure, and honestly, it might be the most emotionally intelligent phrase in the English language for dealing with frustration.
You are referring to the phrase, "I can't seem to."
Yes. It is profoundly different than just throwing your hands up and saying, I can't.
It really is. We utilize "I can't seem to" when you are actively trying to accomplish something. You are dedicating real effort to it. But for some complex reason, you simply cannot manage to achieve it in that moment. It acknowledges your ongoing effort while simultaneously admitting the temporary failure. It is far more natural and vastly kinder to your own psychology than a blunt, definitive, "I can't."
Okay, if you're listening to this right now, maybe you're commuting or walking the dog or doing the dishes, I want you to think about how this feels in practice. Imagine a scenario where you desperately want to stop checking your phone during dinner with your family.
That's a great example.
You are trying, but the habit keeps winning. Think about the difference between saying, I can't stop checking my phone, which sounds like an addiction you've completely surrendered to, versus saying, I can't seem to stop checking my phone.
Go ahead, try saying it out loud right now, just to feel the difference.
Seriously, give it a try. I can't seem to stop checking my phone.
The latter immediately reframes the struggle. Let's look at another context utilizing the vocabulary we discussed earlier. Imagine you are trying to follow a new organizational plan or a diet, but you keep abandoning it. Using the phrase "stick to," which means to consistently follow a plan, how do you express that friction?
Okay, take a second.
You would say, "I can't seem to stick to my schedule," or "I can't seem to stick to my diet."
It just rolls off the tongue. It sounds so much more mature and objective than saying, I always ruin my own schedule.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, using this specific phrasing fundamentally alters our mindset. When you say "I can't," you are establishing a fixed mindset.
It sounds permanent.
Exactly. It's a closed door on your potential. But when you say "I can't seem to," you are signaling a growth mindset. You are framing the failure as a puzzle that you are currently trying to solve. It implies that you haven't given up, you're just navigating an obstacle. It leaves the door wide open for future success.
It gives you grace. And man, we desperately need more grace when we are locked in a battle with our own neurology.
Very true.
So let's take a step back and look at the territory we've covered today. We started by exploring how to gently confess our micro delays using phrasal verbs like put things off, externalizing the failure.
And we figured out how to describe our unconscious algorithmic gravitational pulls by admitting we tend to do things, acknowledging the biological reality that we are all just creatures of habit trying to conserve our cognitive budgets.
We also dissected the critical difference between the extreme, often doomed strategy of giving something up entirely versus the highly manageable, realistic approach to simply cut back on or cut down on our vices.
And we wrapped it all up with the ultimate linguistic tool for expressing our struggles without crushing our self-esteem. I can't seem to.
Plus, we got the ultimate behavioral hack, introduce friction. Move the phone, hide the snacks, out of sight, out of mind. So what does this all mean?
Well, this raises an important question, and it's something that wasn't explicitly spelled out in the texts, but it is the logical endpoint of everything we've discussed regarding environmental design.
Okay, I'm listening.
We've talked extensively about moving our phone chargers and engineering our physical rooms, but what happens when the environment isn't physical? What happens when the environment is digital?
Oh, wow. Where are you going with this?
Think about the user interfaces of the apps we use. The infinite scroll, the autoplay features on those tiny house videos, the perfectly timed notifications. Trillion-dollar tech companies have hired thousands of behavioral psychologists to design digital environments with zero friction.
Oh, so they are weaponizing it.
They are weaponizing our biological identity as creatures of habit against us. So the next time you feel immense guilt because you can't seem to put your phone down, you have to ask yourself, is this a personal failure of willpower, or are you just losing a rigged game against an algorithm designed to drain your cognitive budget?
That completely flips the script.
Yeah.
It means we aren't just fighting our own biology. We are fighting an environment engineered by people who literally profit off our bad habits.
Exactly.
It makes the act of moving that phone charger across the room feel less like a self-help tip and more like an act of absolute rebellion.
It really is a rebellion.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We highly encourage you to take these concepts and phrases out into the real world.
Absolutely. Try them out.
The next time you find yourself delaying a complex task or grabbing that second cup of coffee you didn't really need, practice telling a friend or even just whispering to yourself that you're trying to cut down on being a creature of habit.
Until next time, keep questioning your routines, be kind to your cognitive budget, and definitely move that phone charger across the room tonight.